Good evening and welcome to the first ever State of Inspiritus. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to the many supporters who are gathering with us tonight who've made an investment in this cause over the many years. I'm John Moeller. I'm the president and CEO of Inspiritus, and I'm your host for this evening. Tonight, Inspiritus will be taking you on a journey, an odyssey that we've been on for every day for the last 18 months. It's an odyssey to become a better, more nimble and capable companion to those that we accompany who are wrestling with the most powerful storms of life, storms that stop you dead, storms that cause you to be shriveled, to languish, and to cling to life. In each and every case, entire families and whole communities suffer the effects and are diminished. Tonight, you'll hear their stories, but each of their stories begins with a tremendous and life-transforming disruption. These are their disruptions.
More than 30 million Americans across the South face the threat of severe weather tonight.
A tornado outbreak across several states as we come on the air. The National Weather Service warning tonight of a particularly dangerous situation in at least 4 states already.
The outbreak turning deadlier. At least 9 fatalities and more than 30 confirmed cases of the coronavirus.
Overnight, Taliban leaders are claiming they have taken control of the Panjshir province.
There is an urgent need for more foster parents across the state, with the pandemic dramatically slashing interest.
Since the pandemic started, we're seeing child abuse reports going up as well.
This morning, an urgent search for the missing after at least 2 devastating tornadoes in Tennessee claimed the lives of at least 25 people.
Millions of Americans who lost part or all of their income due to the coronavirus pandemic are facing eviction.
Hunger in America, especially for children, has soared to historic levels.
The chaos in Afghanistan as U.S. troops head back into the country to secure Kabul's main airport after thousands flooded the airport in a desperate attempt to flee the Taliban.
At the end of my 4 months here, I will be back in the same position I was in June, looking for a permanent, accessible house.
What are the odds of you finding a permanent, accessible house?
I would say 1 in a million.
These are indeed the stories of Inspiritus. They're stories of pain and suffering, loss and deprivation, all of which we've been responding to over the last 18 months. Some of these stories are super fresh. In fact, as we respond to the urgent crisis in Afghanistan. Against this backdrop, Inspiritus goes to work, joining people where they are, sitting with them, setting them on a new path to stability, health, and empowering them to overcome difficult odds and return to their rightful place in the community and in society. While their journeys are hard, Inspiritus helps them to tap into their inner strength and resilience. We've come to realize that what they really need is not a handout, not even a hand up. What they need is a guide, someone who will come alongside without judgment, who knows the road ahead, and who skillfully can direct their path and journey with them. While Inspiritus embraces all and welcomes all, as an organization started by people of faith, we're reminded of the scripture passage from Matthew 5:41 that says, "If anyone wishes you to go with him 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. My faith urges me to join others as they toil." When we join with those at Inspiritus, we experience with them their triumph over tragedy. Their stories tonight promise to inspire. In fact, it's their stories, and their stories are the reason that we call ourselves Inspiritus. You see, Inspiritus means to fill with courage, to fill with strength of purpose, to fill with the Spirit. Tonight, we hope you'll get to feel and to sense their grit, determination, and thanks in part to Inspiritus, where they're headed. And finally, how your presence can be felt. You'll also learn some of the secrets that have enabled Inspiritus to become an excellent guide to each program participant. You see, like our program participants, Inspiritus has had to adapt to operate in an environment that's challenging, unstable, ever-changing, and even hostile at times. Like our program participants, we've had to harness our strengths and hone our resilience to navigate through a pandemic, economic uncertainty, racism, political strife, a sea change in government funding priorities, escalating climatic weather events, global events like the most recent events in Afghanistan. But through it all, like our program participants, we've emerged stronger, more capable, and with a brighter road ahead. So tonight, I invite Michelle Angelette, our Chief Operating Officer, and Virginia Spencer, our Chief Development Officer, to help and join with me to unpack the challenges and lessons from the last 18 months. Michelle is a former registered nurse, an ER nurse, a deacon in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, with degrees in business, nursing, and an MBA. Virginia has degrees in political science, a master's of public administration. She's a former business owner, and she has nonprofit executive experience over the last dozen years. Michelle and Virginia, glad to have you with us. Before we tackle the lessons, let's review what we've been through over the last 18 months. Indeed, we've lived through, we're in the midst of two different presidential administrations. One administration reduced refugee arrivals by 85%, slashing our ability to deliver services. And the current presidential administration has lifted those caps and promises to welcome record numbers of refugees. We expect and are adapting to a 600% increase from just 12 months ago. And at the same time, our Child and Family Services has had to adjust to decreases in the number of children who've been sent into foster care, in part by shifting priorities at state and federal levels, but also thanks to the pandemic. It's been a huge adjustment for our team. And at the same time, we've been responding to floods, tornadoes, hurricanes from Tennessee to Georgia to Alabama and beyond. Our team has been depleted. And at the same time, we've had to stand up an Afghan response to welcome refugees to Georgia to give them a fresh start. All of this during a pandemic. Let's not forget the state of emergency that many of our children and adults were facing, and the fact that many of them were living through a housing crisis. Inspiritus has had to make some very difficult and critical decisions and execute on those decisions. Michelle, can you talk us through some of those strategic decisions about how they've helped position Inspiritus for today and tomorrow?
Sure, John, I'd be glad to. Nonprofit organizations like Inspiritus, excuse me one second here. Nonprofit organizations like Inspiritus have always had their own unique set of challenges. And usually we think of funding first, and funding is surely one of them, and one that Virginia will speak to here momentarily. But another challenge for nonprofits is often lack of flexibility or doing things the way we have always done them. Oftentimes that's tied to inefficiencies in how we do things because nonprofits historically lack resources, right? And money, people capacity, what we need to adapt to better ways of managing the work that we do. So back in 2017, while we were still Lutheran Services of Georgia, or LSG, and the board was in its search process for a new CEO, these challenges were recognized. It was becoming much harder for faith-based organizations like Inspiritus, who offered program areas across a wide swath of the human service areas, to stay competitive. So in 2018 and 2019, under new leadership, we began making some significant transforming changes that would help us navigate the rough seas we were in. And the first of those changes was joining forces with Lutheran Services in Tennessee. As a smaller organization that shared our same Lutheran faith-based roots, joining these forces together allowed us to help stabilize the programs in Tennessee while at the same time allowing this new organization to geographically expand its reach and therefore its impact. And so as a new organization, we needed a name that spoke to the large tent of people that we supported in our programs, a name that reflected the deep diversity amongst our staff, and also a name that invited in the wider community of individuals, congregations, and corporations, all who shared our vision for accompanying people on their journeys from surviving to thriving. Because what we knew from our conversations with partners and potential partners was that our vision, our mission, and our values were compelling to lots of organizations and individuals who maybe didn't look quite like us, but they recognized that the Inspiritus impact was something that they wanted to join forces with and be a part of. And so we embraced the name Inspiritus. And as you said earlier, it does mean to fill with courage or to fill with strength of purpose or spirit, but we also saw it as a reflection of the wide tent of welcome that Inspiritus is. So those big changes were really a big jumping off point, if you will, for a culture shift that is still happening today within the organization. Internally, we made some significant organizational changes, both at the program level, but also at the back office level. And those changes helped us to become much more flexible and adaptable to this dynamic environment that we found ourselves in and still find ourselves in today. At the program level, we evaluated all of our programs. And although we had to make the difficult decision about making some changes to what we offered under our umbrella of Children and Family Services, we also made a very intentional decision at that time to keep the wide array of program offerings that we had, because that's who Inspiritus had become known for. That's what people had come to expect from us. And so while it might have been a little bit easier for us to scale down and maybe focus on one or two of those and become a niche provider, we chose the challenging road of sticking with offering this vast array of programs, accompanying a wide swath of people whose lives have been interrupted because of many things. And in just a few minutes, you'll hear about each of those program areas. At the back office level, we were making some big changes as well, and they were quite providential for us. In March of 2020, just as we were starting to feel the beginnings of the coronavirus pandemic, we had already started pivoting ourselves to become a mobile workforce. We had recognized by that point that we did not need all of the office space that we had, because quite frankly, our programs were delivered out in the community and we didn't need big office spaces or lots of buildings to do that. So we strategically downsized and right-sized our office footprint across our geography. And with that, we saw substantial savings in things like rent and copiers and all of the expenses that it takes to run an office or several offices. And we've been able to take those savings and turn them right back into equipping and growing our programs so that they can serve more people. We made sure our staff had all the tools they needed, such as laptops and cell phones. So again, for us, the pivot to a remote workforce, though it was there when the pandemic hit, for us, it was a minor pivot. And this last year, our board took the big step of taking a good look at itself and asking the hard question of who's not at this table. And so the board identified some gaps in needed expertise, some gaps in geographic representation, because now we've grown to serve people across 3 states, Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee, and also identified gaps in representation of people that we serve and people on our staff. And so I'm so pleased to be able to say that now, as of a few months ago, our board of directors has grown by 9 new members, almost doubling our board capacity, and really helping us to be able to go deeper in living out the vision, mission, and values of Inspiritus. And so Virginia, while we've been doing all this, we've also been focused on making some changes that would enable our long-term financial sustainability. Do you want to speak to those just a little bit?
Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. Well, first off, thank you everybody for bringing your presence to our event tonight. We're so glad to have you here to hear these stories. Um, and Michelle and John have so astutely shared so many of the both providential and strategic moves that Inspiritus leadership and operations made in the years leading up to where we are now. That have allowed us to successfully respond to the great community needs that have arisen out of the pandemic above and beyond the ordinary lines of operation that we respond to. And with that high demand, an example of how that played out on behalf of all of us was as the pandemic rolled out, we started to receive phone calls from people like Becca Butcher out of our Refugee Services Department, frantically alerting us to say hundreds of refugees who were self-sufficient have started calling us because they're losing their jobs as this pandemic is starting to occur. That was just one example. We found urgent calls like that came across from every program area and every population we serve across Tennessee and Alabama and Georgia. Thankfully, this has been a most unusual year of generosity. And our development team and program operations have rallied and expanded and increased all of our efforts to the point of exhaustion, quite frankly, to help us make sure we could try to go after every dollar because we know that there's such great need and we've succeeded with a lot of your support. So thank you for joining us to hear how this has gone. In the last year or so, we set out before the pandemic to ambitiously write over $1 million of new funding requests and hopefully raise $400,000 to $500,000 of new funding. Well, the pandemic changed everything. Great need arose. We wrote over $3 million worth of proposals in the year after the pandemic, and we've brought in over $4 million of new assistance. Almost all of it has gone out directly to respond to needs in the community. With the generosity of the American Red Cross joining us in our disaster program, they helped us with a six-figure grant that helped repair 28 homes down in the Albany region across 4 counties that were still damaged from the storms from Hurricane Michael in 2018. 2 years later, in the heart of a pandemic, we helped those families move back in their homes this year. Same thing happened in Tennessee. Many of you guys helped as the Nashville tornado tore across Middle Tennessee from Nashville out to Cookeville. Well, with the support of churches, Lutheran partners, donors, Thrivent, and Lutheran Disaster Response, what started off as a seed funding of $250,000 quickly allowed us to get boots on the ground and deploy a team to repair and rebuild homes. We've now helped put together over $1 million of direct funding into repairing and rebuilding. We've rebuilt 5 homes in Cookeville. We've helped repair over 50 homes, and the operation is still going on while we're also now standing up operations in Noonan, Georgia, and Waverly, Tennessee, and South Nashville to do similar work there with your support. As the COVID pandemic rolled out, we partner with places like United Way of Greater Atlanta, Gwinnett County, the state of Tennessee, Second Harvest Community Food Bank, and many more to deploy over $2 million of emergency financial assistance that helped over 4,000 individuals who are at risk of homelessness or having their lights cut off because of job losses from the pandemic. We helped make sure those families were stable. And our Financial Opportunity Center out of the Refugee Services Department continues to help families and individuals find employment at record rates. And that work just continues to pick up as they're now preparing for significant demands, over 600% increase in numbers of individuals, including many Afghan allies and military allies that we're helping come into this region soon and successfully integrate into our community and become self-sufficient rapidly. So your support has already helped raise $200,000 in recent months just for Afghan allies alone, and that hasn't stopped. We thank you for that. Your support is helping us help foster children and caregivers have better access to nursing and medical health support as they are navigating in isolated silos the pandemic without a lot of the access to support services they were used to before the pandemic. You're helping us find new foster families where there is a deficit because so many homes have closed their doors and said, we'll think about opening to foster children again after the pandemic, during the time where more children now than ever need their help. So thank you for your support. And I'm going to kick it back to you, John. Thank you.
Virginia and Michelle, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for sharing tonight. The times of the last 18 months have been crazy. We've been shifting gears constantly, pivoting, as you said, closing offices and going virtual. But at a time when there was no way that we absolutely had to invest in our people, though, right? And so we made investments in our staff because our program participants couldn't thrive unless our staff were thriving. And so, Michelle, you alluded to it, but we've made a real effort to support people as they move to a remote workforce. We're providing tools, technology, connection, and frankly, community, even though in many cases it's been virtual. We've known that frontline staff needed empathetic and effective leadership. And so we focused on providing 360 reviews, and we've been building performance review systems that are based on our values. It's been important that as society wrestles with racism, that we tackle it as well here at Inspiritus. And so every month, leaders have participated in facilitated and guided conversations around the topic. Finally, we've tried very hard to empower individuals and case managers to make decisions, and then we've tried to get out of the way so that they can do their job. So as we think now about the stories of the individuals we support, let's turn our attention to our second video of the evening. It's entitled Lives Empowered.
My home is being fixed, but I'm so grateful for all the help I've gotten. I wish I could thank everybody.
We've had volunteers and organizations come and actually told me they wouldn't be able to help because it was too dangerous. And when y'all came, I was just like, oh, I'm not gonna believe it until I see it. And we came that morning and we seen y'all had basically brought everything from the basement all the way out here. Yeah, y'all exceeded my expectations. Then all the stuff y'all found, I'm happy that y'all came out here.
The best part about being in this program is you just can be yourself. You meet new people, different personalities, you catch on, you learn new words, new phases of art, and you up your skills.
I started because it was in the church, for number one. And I need to know the Lord, get a little closer with the higher power. I need to straighten my life out. And once I started coming, it's exactly what I needed.
In my home, there's never a dull moment. I'm so serious. There's joy in this house all day long. Laughter, I mean, she's a good kid.
Inspiritus has been wonderful. They came in because we didn't know which way to turn. They have cleaned up and just came in and took over and just made everything feel good for us. And it was just awesome.
At this time, we turn our attention to program experts in the 5 areas that Inspiritus offers programs, and I'm joined tonight by Becca Butcher, the Assistant Director of Refugee and Immigrant Services. She's a licensed master social worker with 10 years in the field and 7 years at Inspiritus. I'm also joined by Sherry Baresh, Director of Disaster Services at Inspiritus. She's got more than 15 years in the industry. She's twice been named the National VOAD Volunteer of the Year. She's launched new programs under here at Inspiritus. Janet Arning is the director of our Middle Tennessee programs. She's been in program development for 31 years, 20 of that with Second Harvest Food Bank and the last 11 with Inspiritus and its predecessor. Renee Mason. Renee is the Director of Disability and Health Services. She's an RN and has been an RN for the last 28 years. She's served in the disability field in leadership positions for the last 12 years and is a recognized leader in the healthcare field. Suzette Roberts is our final panelist tonight. She's the Director of Children and Family Services, and she's served in executive leadership positions for the last 10 years in child welfare. And she's in her second stint with Inspiritus. She has her master's of social work, and she is a licensed master social worker. Welcome, panelists. We're awfully glad to have your insights tonight. We're going to, at this point, take a closer look at what surviving to thriving looks like. And so we're going to turn our attention to Becca Butcher. Becca, we start with you. Inspiritus is wrestling and groaning under the weight of the fact that there are literally tens of thousands of Afghan allies who have evacuated out of Afghanistan. They're looking for a fresh start in America. We expect to welcome over 1,300 Afghan allies at Inspiritus and refugees over the next 12 months. And the journey for an Afghan family to settle into a new country and a new home is daunting. Can you share with us an example of someone in your program who we've seen go from surviving to thriving?
Thanks, John. Sure, I'm happy to. So last year, a refugee from Afghanistan named Riazola enrolled in Inspiritus' Savings Match program to build his family's savings and help increase his credit score. Unfortunately, when COVID hit, he lost his job and was no longer able to pay his family's rent or cover their basic expenses. Inspiritus' economic empowerment coaches connected him to COVID relief funding and helped cover his rent while also helping him look for a new job. Through multiple financial coaching sessions and job coaching sessions, Inspiritus' staff discovered that he had experience in electrical engineering in his home country of Afghanistan, and we were able to place him in a higher paying job as an electrician and maintenance technician. Riazola and his family are now, again, financially self-sufficient, and they're saving to purchase their first home in the United States.
Holy cow, that's amazing. Becca, we shift gears now to hearing just a little bit about what we're doing in disaster services. Since the pandemic began, we've been responding to disasters across the Southeast, including Alabama, 3 in Tennessee, and in Georgia. Sherry, as we think about families trying to put their lives back together and go from surviving to thriving, can you share with us a story tonight of how Inspiritus has helped a family go from surviving to thriving? I love it. Sherry, you might be on mute. It's possible.
Thank you, John. I most certainly was. What I was saying is that as we were in our response mode to the tornadoes that went from Nashville across Tennessee, then we came upon one home that was very severely damaged. And we tried to find the homeowner for that and was very unsuccessful at doing so. Until fortunately 6 months later, when we were back in with our recovery, then the paths crossed again. And when we met the father, then he had said, that he had given up all hope, that he had no even thoughts that they would be able to return to their home again. And when we showed up with all of our volunteers and started working, then he started regaining hope and feeling like that he'd had a renewal in life again. And he had shared with us, he had spent 2 tours in Afghanistan, and then he went through this EF4 tornado in the basement with his 5 children. And he said there was no comparison, that with the fear and the courage that it took in Afghanistan, you couldn't even start to compare it to the feeling and the trauma that he went through being in the basement with 5 children and his wife. And he said the trauma and the fear just couldn't even start to be compared because he had no control over what was happening when he was in that basement. So we were able to help him, and I'm happy to share right now that come Thanksgiving, they will be able to share Thanksgiving dinner in their new home again, back together as they were before the tornado hit. So thank you, John.
Sherry, thanks. I see the theme. There's a home theme, as Becca shared about helping people get established in a new home, and your business model is all about helping people get back into their home. We have Janet Arning with us, and Janet heads up our Middle Tennessee regional programs. Janet, can you share a little bit about one of the remarkable individuals that you've seen go from surviving to thriving in the last year?
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, in March of 2020, as COVID-19 really shut down the world, and it kept volunteers at home, our friend Gloria and a few of her neighbors were determined to help us keep our North Nashville food pantry open. Gloria is an active member of our Building Healthy Families program and a founding member of our Healthy Gardens program here in Tennessee. So along with Gloria, neighbors Brenda, Barbara, Trevor, and Ronnie all stepped up during the height of the pandemic. And they were just determined that they would be open throughout the pandemic for not only their neighbors, but for families all across Middle Tennessee whose pantries had shut down. So our friends have experienced firsthand the positive impacts of our empowerment programs in their community, and they've been empowered by them. And so it was only natural for them to step up and help others. And they became essential volunteers of our hunger relief efforts throughout the entire pandemic. You can still find Gloria here in the food bank most days, assisting with helping folks find food, but also assisting with other projects. And so for Gloria and her neighbors, thriving looked like being a leader in their community and helping others survive and thrive by providing for basic needs.
Janet, thanks. It's amazing that folks go from surviving to thriving and really to contributing to their community. We now turn our attention, and I invite you to join me in conversation with Renee. Renee, we've highlighted some of the amazing successes from the other programs. I'd like now to focus our attention on two other areas, both the Children and Family Services and Disability and Health Services. We'll start with you, Renee. Can you share with us an example of one of the many resilient individuals who our team is supporting in their journey from surviving to thriving?
I sure can, John. I would love to. The first person that comes to my mind is Rachel. Rachel has been with Inspiritus for 16 years. And during the first 15 of those, she had 7 different placements. She had so many behaviors, which included frequent visits to the emergency room, hospitalizations, and those behaviors were real barriers to her being able to participate in the community, even at the day centers that she attended. Individuals like Rachel are sometimes relegated to living in institutions like nursing homes, or they can even be placed in the first home that's willing to accept them without their input on what's really important to them. But we knew that Rachel had so much potential, and we didn't give up on her. And so about a year ago, Denise Parker, our Assistant Director of Disability and Health Services, identified a potential placement for her. And with Rachel's input and agreement, we placed her in what we now hope is her forever home. Since she's been there, she has had no behaviors, no emergency room visits, no hospitalizations. She exercises daily, she makes amazing food choices, and she's lost over 40 pounds. She is so incredibly proud of her physical transformation that she now enjoys wearing dresses and pearls and singing at her church. She is truly thriving in this new, what we think is almost perfectly matched shared living arrangement. And we're just so proud of her and so proud for her. When we take the time to help find a placement where an individual like Rachel can build a life, you can truly start to see how they can go from thriving to surviving. An individual with intellectual and developmental disabilities needs a family. They need hobbies. They need social interaction and jobs. They need to be involved in their community. And a perfect placement for them includes a skilled support companion and a forever home so that we can accompany them on navigating through those challenges so that they can make that their reality.
Renee, the story is just another impactful another impactful story. Thank you for sharing. And similarly, we now turn to Suzette Roberts. Suzette heads up our Children and Family Services Department. She works with at-risk youth and children who are in need of a family intervention and sometimes a family that would come and offer foster care. Suzette, can you tell us a story of one of the remarkable children who are now thriving after being placed into a home that Inspiritus supports?
Absolutely, John. Here at Inspiritus, we receive referrals for youth who are very difficult to place, mostly due to their medical, intellectual, and mental health challenges. Many have experienced multiple but unsuccessful placements and sometimes have even lived in temporary placements for more than 30 days before coming to us. Shane is one of those youth. He grew up in foster care and disrupted several placements before landing at Inspiritus. Shane came to us at the age of 17 with cerebral palsy, autism, and functioning on the level of a 6-year-old. But once he was matched and placed with the right foster parent, we witnessed the transformation. Shane received the stability, love, and nurturing that he so needed. Over the last 5 years, Shane's foster mother provided the positive reinforcement and consistent structure he needed while ushering him into adulthood. Like many young adults with special needs in foster care, when Shane reached the age of 21, he almost fell through the cracks. But thanks to the collaborative efforts of Inspiritus, the Department of Children and Family Services, and the Department of Behavioral Health, he was successfully transitioned to Inspiritus's Disability Services program, where he continues to develop his independence, reach his full potential, and thrive. Like Shane, we see many of the youth in our program blossom and live full lives despite their challenges. And if they are unable to return home or be placed with relatives, many of our foster parents step up to the challenge and they adopt. And sometimes, like in Shane's case, we work to transition them to a host home where they can continue to receive support. Either way, we help them find their forever homes and to have a brighter future.
The stories tonight have covered, as you have heard, really in many cases from birth all the way to the very end of life. And the stories of the Inspiritus individuals that we accompany are somewhere on that journey. But what is true about each and every one of them is we believe that they can thrive. Now, as we shift gears, it's important to note that we have incredible partnerships. And due to COVID-19, we've seen the needs of our program participants grow, but we've also seen the community step up and provide partnership. And so our programs and partnerships have grown, and I'm going to turn the microphone to Janet. Janet, can you share with us how Inspiritus Financial Opportunity Center went from serving refugee families in Clarkston, Georgia, to serving thousands of people from Georgia and Tennessee who were facing the hardships from the pandemic?
Yeah, John, it was pretty amazing. Our wonderful staff in Clarkston quickly pivoted in 2020 to focus on serving families suffering these financial hardships due to COVID and loss of work. 4,336 individuals from Georgia and Tennessee reached out to our team and received $1.6 million in rent and utility assistance. A single mother of 2 boys who had her car repossessed after falling behind on payments, thankfully, due to this team, did not lose her home and kept her lights on after receiving assistance. Another recipient, Linda, told us, "You saved us from eviction." She had seen her neighbors being evicted across the street. Now, at the same time that was happening, hundreds of families here in Middle Tennessee lost their homes from this devastating tornado. And it hit in the middle of the night on March 2nd and ran 60 miles from Nashville to Cookeville. Now, I'm truly grateful to be a part of this expanding Inspiritus team because we care for families, and whether it's hunger or financial hardships or pandemics, or disasters, this team works together to help folks go from surviving to thriving. John and Sherry, I wonder if you could talk about the organizations that came together in Middle Tennessee and the difference they made.
Well, Janet, I was thinking just about the outpouring of support following a tornado that ran from Nashville all the way to Cookeville back last spring, and the flood that impacted Waverly just only a matter of weeks ago. And the outpouring of support is phenomenal. And yet, at the same time, there needs to be an organizing force. And so we've been fortunate to be at ground zero in each of those places, to be an organizing force, but to also work with incredible partners like the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, the Southeastern Synod right here, a series of churches across a 4-state region, to work with Lutheran Disaster Response, as well as the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. But that's not the end of it. The churches and the houses of worship and the various different faith groups that we've been able to work with is humbling. And we've worked with corporate partners like Thrive It Financial. We've also worked with Home Depot, and then other great nonprofit partners like various United Ways and community foundations. So all of them working together have joined with us to help us really ensure that people move from surviving to thriving. Sherry, what would you add?
John, I just want to say that with the tornado again through Nashville and Cookeville, that thank you to all of our Lutheran partners and corporate partners and sponsors and everyone else. We were able to take that $1 million that was raised. And with that, we brought in 579 volunteers and was able to provide 15,978 hours to help them with their repair and the rebuild and getting ready to move on with their lives. And with that, as Virginia had stated earlier, we've now repaired 54 homes and built 5 new homes, and we're still working. So yes, our partners have been a huge, huge part of our journey in being able to help.
So Sherry, thank you. Janet, thank you. And now I'm gonna turn again back to another area that we've heard a little bit from, but I want to go there again. Both our Children and Family Services and our Disability Services programs specialize in placing children and adults with significant medical and behavioral challenges into caring and loving homes. Renee, I think we've still got you. Can you share more about the challenges individuals in this program face, but also maybe share some of the ways the audience can help?
Yeah, sure, John. I can think of several examples specifically related to the recent referrals that we've been receiving that really highlight the challenges that we're facing in both disability services and with foster care. An example of that is we received a referral a few weeks ago for a 20-year-old young adult named Jonathan, who is currently in DFACS custody. Jonathan is in a wheelchair and also has intellectual and developmental diagnoses. Technically, right this moment, he needs a foster care placement. However, in a very short period of time, he's going to need to transition into a host home so he can have a more long-term shared living arrangement. He's going to require a great deal of medical and physical care. He's got to have a home that's wheelchair accessible. Unfortunately, both foster care and disability services at this moment, we do not have the capacity to either take an individual that needs a wheelchair accessible home, an individual that needs extensive physical care, or both of those things. So, and for Jonathan, that could mean that as he transitions out of DFACS and onto that comprehensive waiver as an adult, he may have to be placed in a nursing home. That's what happens when you don't have a place for individuals that require that type of care. Of course, if he's placed in a nursing home, that's going to prevent him from being involved in his community and certainly prevent him from being able to thrive in his life. And you know, John, I know that the listeners that we have on this evening cannot all open their homes to this young man, but I bet that there are some on this call that know someone who has a background in healthcare that might be able to do that. And that's what we really need.
Renee, you've nailed it. We really need introductions to people, to groups, to ally groups that care about children and adult individuals like the ones you've mentioned here. So this is really the time in our program where we turn to our audience, and we promised that the stories of our individuals and families would inspire you. We promised that they were the reason that we call ourselves Inspiritus, that we thought that their stories would uplift your spirits. And so we invite you to make your presence felt in their lives. And so we turn to our final video of the evening.
You never get any place by yourself, and it's always good as you go up to stick your hand down and grab somebody else on the way.
We need volunteers. Come, help us. You won't regret it. It's a wonderful feeling.
We'll take you for a day, we'll take you for a week, we'll take you for years. If you feel that you need to volunteer, just take a deep breath, dive in, and go for it.
It is our job to provide people with hope, and not just to give people handouts, but hands up.
It's a fantastic opportunity for Home Depot, for any organization to partner with Inspiritus. It's been an amazing experience. Absolutely, I will be back, and Inspiritus won't be getting rid of Tim Ramirez.
The Support Companion is the heartbeat of our program. I mean, we could not operate without them. The work that we do is so important, and the individuals that we accompany, they're so necessary to society.
Let's all move from surviving to thriving.
We hope you enjoyed the video. And now I will just highlight a few interesting ways and dynamic ways that you can make your presence felt as we move forward. And really, it's because of your involvement and your investment in our programs that individuals do indeed move from surviving to thriving. One of the things you can do is volunteer. There are ongoing disaster efforts that are going on across Tennessee, and we hate to think that the hurricane season is still not over yet, but it's not over. And so we will remain vigilant and ready, but we've got ongoing relief teams in Waverly, Tennessee, and in Nashville. We would welcome you to bring a group or to come out individually. Our empowerment programs across the region are also in need of volunteers. There's gardening work, there's art therapy program work, there's a food pantry that you can volunteer in. And if for some reason or another, it's just difficult for you to get out, and it is difficult in living in the midst of a pandemic, there's an opportunity for you to give financially. $5,000 can repair a home hit by a disaster. $1,000 can help house an Afghan family, and $100 can help feed a family. But listen, every single dollar helps. You can give online. In the chat, you're going to see information about how to give and where to give. The Inspiritus website is a plethora of information. If you are a group, you're a faith group, a church group, a corporate group, if you'll go to the Inspiritus website, you will learn more about how your group can partner up. You heard in the video and throughout the evening that many of the folks that we support are in need of a home. And right now, in response to what happened in Afghanistan, and as the US military vacated there, and the United States has taken on welcoming Afghan allies to help start a life, we need homes. We need people to literally open your home to an Afghan family. And I know that some of you might say, well, I don't know what's involved. Well, Sarah Burke on our team can bring you up to speed. Her email address is going to be in the chat if it's not already. And it's sarah.burke@weinspirit.org. And you can learn more. In fact, we're expecting 10 families this week alone to descend upon Atlanta and Savannah, Georgia. So there are going to be plenty of opportunities. And our family and children's area is in need of specialized homes that can help children who are medically fragile and have medically complex situations. And really the same goes for our disability and health services. These individuals need a loving home. And if you're not the family, maybe you know the family. So we have just about reached the end of our program, and I want to see if there's any questions in the chat or in the Q&A. And I'm going to turn again to our Chief Operating Officer, Michelle, to see if we have time for a few questions.
Sure. You know, John, we've had one good question about those who are coming from Afghanistan, and you just touched on the need for homes. We've put folks in touch with Sarah Burke, but while we have a couple extra minutes and we have Becca with us, I'm going to ask Becca just to come off a mute and talk for a minute or two about the specific needs of this population. This was a new population that we're resettling alongside all of the other folks that are still coming in, and Becca can speak to that.
Sure. Thanks, Michelle. I would echo what John said. Housing is absolutely a need, and we welcome people who are willing to open their home temporarily. But permanent housing is also a huge need for this community, as we see a housing shortage across the United States and the Southeast. So if you know of someone renting an apartment or a connection to a larger housing provider who'd be willing to rent to refugees, we would love to make that connection. In addition to securing housing, we set up housing for our refugee and Afghan allies, providing things like beds, school supplies, equipping an apartment with every basic thing you would need to live. Most of our Afghan allies left urgently and literally only have the clothes on their back. So there are many housing supplies that we need, and we do have an Amazon wish list as well to help equip those apartments, specifically in Savannah and Birmingham, where we are new to resettling Afghans. We also need volunteers. Afghan children are experiencing interrupted school and are going to be tasked with learning English really quickly. So we're accepting virtual volunteers in our after-school program. And again, connecting with Sarah Burke, she can connect you to see how you can meet the needs of Afghan allies in Birmingham, Atlanta, or Savannah.
Becca, thank you. I am. The need is tremendous. And so, yes, if you think we're talking to you, the audience tonight, we are. And so please connect us with individuals and families that you think can be involved in this, from Savannah to Atlanta to Birmingham and beyond. Michelle, is there anything else that was just hanging out there that you felt was unresolved before we close out?
I think I would take this opportunity to add one more ask to the wish list. Hope Tree. Many of you have come to associate Hope Tree over the years with Inspiritus. And Hope Tree is our annual gathering of gifts that go to support those that we serve and throughout our programs. And I believe that as early as next week, we will be starting our messaging around our needs for Hope Tree. So that's one more thing that you can do. Keep your eyes on Facebook, keep your eyes on email, check our website, but we will soon be collecting, and probably it will look very similar to last year, different in a pandemic, where we will be gathering primarily gift cards that can be used to support lots of the individuals that we serve in our program. So thank you for that.
Yeah, Michelle, thanks. And I think it's probably important to note that this evening has been recorded. The program has been recorded, and we look forward to getting you this information, the recording of the event. Maybe you can pass it along to friends, to family members, to members of your religious group, your church group, your Sunday school class, your corporate group. There's an opportunity for them to learn more. And I want to thank each of you for tuning in. Thank you for making this hour available. Thank you for learning more about how we accompany and how you can be a partner to Inspiritus. What we're doing is just simply making our presence felt, and you can make your presence felt. I want to thank our panelists again for your contribution to this evening. And finally close and reiterate what you've heard. Stay connected to Inspiritus. We hope you'll get more involved. You can go to our website, weinspirit.org, where you can subscribe to a newsletter. And Michelle mentioned Facebook. We are on social media at We Are Inspiritus. That's We Are Inspiritus. And we're on most all the major social networking platforms. So again, thank you for spending your evening with us. Thank you, panelists. And God bless you all. Take care and have a great night. And that concludes our first ever State of Inspiritus.